Judge Coleman was ready to mock a reckless teen until Nathan Carter flipped the entire case upside down. The air inside the Los Angeles County Courthouse is thick with tension. Rows of spectators fill the gallery, some whispering among themselves, others glued to the scene unfolding before them. The soft scratching of reporters' pens echoes through the room, capturing every word, every movement. At the front, behind a polished wooden desk, Judge Richard Coleman leans back in his chair. He's been on the bench for years, long enough to recognize when a case is an easy win. And this is child's play. His fingers drum lazily against the desk as he peers down at the defendant standing before him. Nathan Carter, a 19-year-old with sharp eyes and an unreadable expression, stands at the defendant's table. He doesn't fidget, doesn't shift nervously like most do. His hands rest calmly at his sides. The charges against him, grand theft auto and resisting arrest, are serious, but he doesn't look like a man about to lose everything. The prosecutor, Jacob Whitman, sits confidently at his table, a smirk playing on his lips. He's already rehearsing his victory speech in his head. In his mind, this is a done deal. Judge Coleman lets out a small chuckle, adjusting his glasses as he tilts his head. His voice, laced with sarcasm, cuts through the hushed whispers of the courtroom. Do you even know what courtroom is, kid? This isn't some high school debate club. Laughter ripples through the room. The bailiff smirks. The stenographer grins. Even Nathan's public defender lets out a soft chuckle. The entire room seems to be in on the joke. But Nathan doesn't laugh. His eyes move across the room, studying, calculating. He notices everything. The judge's condescension, the prosecutor's smug confidence, the jury's disinterest. Then, slowly, he takes a deep breath and delivers the words that change everything. Your Honor, I'll be representing myself. The laughter dies instantly. A wave of silence crashes over the courtroom. Judge Coleman's smirk fades just a little. The prosecutor's confidence flickers. Spectators exchange curious glances. For the first time, the courtroom doesn't see a clueless teenager. They see something else, something they can't quite understand yet. A week ago, Los Angeles, 11:45 p.m. Nathan Carter walks down a dimly lit street, his backpack slung over one shoulder. He's just finished a long night of studying at his friend's house and is making his way home. His mind is still running through case studies. He's been obsessed with law for as long as he can remember. Up ahead, he notices something unusual. A black Mercedes-Benz idling near the curb, its driver's side door slightly open. He barely gives a second glance. Cars left running outside convenience stores aren't unusual. But then, screeching tires, flashing red and blue lights, sirens screaming through the night. Nathan turns his head just in time to see a figure, hooded fast, jump from the driver's seat of the Mercedes and disappear into the alleyway. A split second later, police cars flood the street. Hands up, get on the ground. Now, confused, Nathan's heart pounds as he lifts his hands. Before he can even process what's happening, he's tackled to the pavement. A knee presses in his back, heavy, crushing. I didn't do anything. He gasps, his cheeks scraping against the rough asphalt. That's what they all say. A voice sneers above him. Nathan struggles to breathe, his arms wrenched behind him, cold steel biting into his wrists. He hears the voices of two officers, Officer Daniel Reynolds and his partner, Officer Cole Jensen. Got him. Yeah. Kid thought he could outrun us. Nathan's eyes widen. Run? He never ran. He never touched the car. I wasn't in the car. I was just walking home. Nathan insists, his voice edged with panic. But the officers don't listen. Reynolds turns to his partner. This is our guy. I saw him behind the wheel. Nathan's stomach twists. That's a lie. The officers haul him up and shove him into the back of the police cruiser. Innocence doesn't matter tonight. The police station is cold. Too bright. Too sterile. Nathan sits in an interrogation room, his wrists raw from the cuffs. The clock on the wall ticks loudly, each second stretching longer than the last. Officer Reynolds stands across from him, arms crossed, eyes sharp. A predator who already smells blood. Tell me, kid, why'd you run? Nathan clenches his fists. I didn't run. I was never in that car. Reynolds scoffs. So what? The car just drove itself. Nathan exhales sharply. He knows how this works. They want a confession, whether it's true or not. Reynolds leans in, voice dropping lower, more condescending. Look, we already have your fingerprints on the steering wheel. You ran from the scene. You were caught blocks away. Just confess now. It'll go easier for you. Nathan's jaw tightens. They're lying. He can feel it. But that doesn't matter, because no one in this room cares about the truth. He straightens his back, meeting Reynolds' gaze head on. I want a lawyer. Reynolds grins. There it is. The kid finally cracked. But instead of calling a lawyer, the officers keep him in the room. Question after question. Threat after threat. Hours pass. No phone call. No lawyer. No mother. Until finally, the station doors slam open. Denise Carter storms in, her presence demanding attention. A paralegal for over 15 years, she knows the law better than most of the officers in this station. She's barely holding in her rage. Her son has been locked up for hours, denied a phone call, interrogated without representation. A rookie officer attempts to stop her, but her voice slices through the air like a blade. Where is my son? The officer freezes. Reynolds smirks, stepping forward. Ma'am, your son is in some serious trouble. Denise's eyes narrow. Then he better have a damn good lawyer. Reynolds folds his arms. Oh, we've got a great public defender lined up for him. Denise laughs, a cold, sharp sound. If my son tells you he's innocent, believe me, he's got a case stronger than yours. For a brief second, a flicker of doubt passes through Reynolds' eyes. But it's gone just as quickly. To him, this is just another case. Just another kid. He doesn't realize he's just arrested the wrong one. The courtroom is silent. The weight of the moment hangs in the air. Nathan sits at the defendant's table, watching, waiting. He remembers every second of that night. The way they twisted the truth, the way they assumed he was guilty before they even had proof. The judge exhales, rubbing his temple. He looks at Nathan, this teenager who refuses to act like a terrified defendant. Finally, he sighs. Fine, let's see what you've got, Mr. Carter. Nathan nods slowly. He's been waiting for this moment his entire life. The Los Angeles County Courthouse is silent except for the confident voice of Jacob Whitman, the prosecutor, as he presents his case. He paces slowly in front of the jury, a smirk tugging at his lips. He doesn't just believe he'll win this case. He's already celebrating. Behind him, a projection screen flickers to life. The image? A stolen black Mercedes-Benz. The screen changes, showing a fingerprint report. Then another, a grainy surveillance image of a figure near the car. Whitman turns back to the jury, his voice carrying an air of rehearsed certainty. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a simple case. The defendant, Nathan Carter, was caught near the scene of the crime. His fingerprints were found on the steering wheel. He attempted to flee from the police. And finally, we have eyewitness testimony from a trained officer of the law, Officer Daniel Reynolds, who saw him behind the wheel of the stolen vehicle. He pauses, scanning the jury. Some nod slightly, already convinced. Others shift in their seats, processing the evidence. At the defense table, Nathan Carter remains still. His pen moves slowly across his legal pad as he takes notes. No reaction, no panic, just calm calculation. Judge Richard Coleman, who has been resting his chin on his hand, lets out an exaggerated sigh and turns toward Nathan. Son, this might be your last chance to let an actual lawyer handle this before you embarrass yourself. The courtroom chuckles. The bailiff smirks. The stenographer exchanges glances with the prosecutor. Nathan doesn't react. Instead, he sets his pen down and leans forward slightly. Then, with a polite smile, he speaks and changes everything. Your Honor, before I begin, can I confirm with the prosecution? Officer Reynolds personally saw me inside the stolen vehicle. His voice is calm, controlled. Whitman grins, already thinking this is a weak attempt to poke holes in the case. That's right, kid. He saw you behind the wheel. Nathan nods, takes a slow breath, then delivers the first major blow. Then I move to dismiss his testimony. The words land like a grenade. The laughter dies. The air in the courtroom shifts. Judge Coleman straightens slightly in his chair, his eyebrows pulling together. Excuse me. Nathan keeps his eyes locked on Whitman. His voice remains level, because Officer Reynolds wasn't even on duty at the time the car was reported stolen. A beat of silence. Then, gasps ripple through the gallery. The jury shifts uncomfortably. The spectators whisper to each other. Even the bailiff's smirk fades. Whitman's expression tightens. Judge Coleman exhales slowly, rubbing his temple. Explain. Nathan leans forward, his confidence unwavering. Your Honor, if I may, I'd like to submit a subpoena request for Officer Reynolds' GPS logs from that night. If he was where he claims to be, the location data will confirm it. But if he wasn't, he lets the words hang in the air. A few jurors glance at one another. The seed of doubt has been planted. For the first time in the entire trial, Prosecutor Jacob Whitman looks slightly nervous. The tension in the Los Angeles County Courthouse is suffocating. The once smug expressions in the room have been replaced with uncertainty. Nathan Carter, still calm, still composed, lets the silence stretch before speaking again. Your Honor, I request that Officer Reynolds' GPS logs from the night of the alleged crime be submitted as evidence. Prosecutor Jacob Whitman shifts in his seat. His once relaxed posture stiffens. He wasn't expecting this. Judge Richard Coleman rubs his temple, exhaling sharply. Do you have a reason to believe this request is relevant? Nathan nods. If Officer Reynolds truly saw me inside that vehicle before my arrest, then his location history should confirm that. But if he wasn't there, then his testimony is inadmissible. A ripple of murmurs spreads through the gallery. The judge studies Nathan carefully. This kid, a defendant representing himself, isn't just making a legal argument. He's strategically dismantling the prosecution's case. After a long pause, Judge Coleman makes his decision. The court will grant the subpoena request. Gasps ripple through the spectators. The bailiff nods to a court clerk, who immediately makes the necessary arrangements. Prosecutor Whitman clears his throat, trying to maintain his composure. Your Honor, this is unnecessary. The officer's testimony is already on record. Then the GPS logs will only confirm his truthfulness, right? Nathan cuts in smoothly. Whitman grits his teeth. He can't argue against that without looking like he's hiding something. Coleman sighs, gaveling down the noise. There will be a short delay while we await the records. Nathan smiles subtly. He's just bought himself time and an advantage. The jury shifts in their seats, waiting. Some glance at each other, intrigued. Nathan takes a slow step forward, turning to face them. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, while we wait, let's discuss the fingerprint evidence. He picks up a pen from the defense table, rolling it between his fingers. Imagine you're in a grocery store. His voice is smooth, measured. You walk down the aisles, you see a bright red apple, and you pick it up. Maybe you check for bruises. Maybe you think about buying it. But in the end, you put it back. A few jurors nod slightly. Nathan's eyes scan the room. He has their attention now. Now imagine hours later, someone shoplifts that same apple. And let's say the store security finds your fingerprints on it. Would that mean you stole it? Silence. A few jurors exchange glances. Would that be enough to convict you of crime? A woman in the second row shifts uncomfortably. A man near the front leans forward slightly, thinking. Nathan's lips press into a firm line. Because that's exactly what's happening here. The prosecution claims that my fingerprints on a car automatically mean I stole it. But fingerprints don't tell us when they were placed. They don't tell us how. They don't tell us the full story. More murmurs spread. Prosecutor Whitman stands abruptly. Objection. The defendant is making speculative arguments. Judge Coleman lifts a hand to silence him. Overruled. Let him continue. Nathan nods, then turns back to the jury. Let's take it further. He picks up the case file, flipping through it. The prosecution is relying on forensic evidence to build this case. But did you know the forensic specialist who analyzed my fingerprints was never called to testify? The jury's expressions shift again. More doubt. Nathan's voice stays calm, confident. No one here can confirm if the analysis was done correctly. No one can confirm how the evidence was handled. And yet, they want you to believe it proves my guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. He lets that sit for a moment. The jury isn't just listening now. They're reconsidering. Judge Coleman exhales. He had underestimated Nathan Carter. This wasn't some cocky teenager grasping at straws. This was someone who knew exactly what he was doing. For the first time, Coleman turns to the prosecution. Mr. Whitman, do you have any other evidence tying Mr. Carter directly to the theft? Whitman's smirk falters. He flips through his case file, stalling. The room is dead silent. He opens his mouth, then closes it again. Nathan folds his arms, waiting. Judge Coleman narrows his eyes. Mr. Whitman. Finally, Whitman speaks. His voice is noticeably less confident. Your Honor, we stand by our current evidence. Nathan gives a slow nod, as if he expected that answer. Noted. He turns back to the jury, letting Whitman's silence do the work for him. The doors at the back of the courtroom creak open. A clerk walks in, holding a printed report. She hands it to the bailiff, who delivers it to the judge. Judge Coleman adjusts his glasses and scans the document. His jaw tightens. The spectators lean forward. The jury watches carefully. The judge exhales sharply. According to Officer Reynolds' GPS records, he was not at the scene of the alleged crime at the time the vehicle was reported stolen. Gasps. A woman in the gallery covers her mouth. The stenographer's fingers freeze over the keyboard. Nathan remains still. Prosecutor Whitman goes pale. Nathan tilts his head slightly, his voice soft but pointed. Your Honor, that means Officer Reynolds never saw me behind the wheel of that car. The judge nods slowly. Nathan turns toward the jury, his voice steady. The prosecution's star witness just proved he was never there. A juror in the front row shakes his head. Another rubs their chin, deep in thought. The case is unraveling. Judge Coleman exhales and turns back to Whitman. Well, Mr. Whitman. Whitman clears his throat, flipping through his papers as if he'll find something that can save him. But there's nothing left. For the first time, the prosecutor has no words. Nathan stands behind the defense table, his hands resting on the polished wood. The courtroom is still buzzing from the revelation that Officer Reynolds was never at the scene. The prosecution's case has been crumbling, but Nathan is not done yet. He takes a deep breath and reaches into his case file. The final piece of evidence, the one that no one in this room was expecting. Your Honor, I'd like to submit one more piece of evidence into the record. Judge Coleman lifts an eyebrow. More. Nathan nods. Yes, Your Honor. The original statement from the owner of the stolen vehicle, Mr. Raymond Whitaker. Silence. The prosecutor, Jacob Whitman, stiffens. His fingers twitch against his notes. He knows what's coming. Nathan flips through the pages until he finds the one he needs. He lifts the paper and begins reading aloud. I left my car running when I ran inside the gas station. Some kid must have jumped in and taken off, but it wasn't the guy you arrested. I saw the kid, and he was white. Gasps erupt in the courtroom. A woman in the jury box covers her mouth. The spectators start whispering loudly. Nathan lowers the paper. He turns, locking eyes with the judge. This statement was omitted from the prosecution's filings. Judge Coleman's face darkens. The judge slowly swivels in his chair toward Whitman, his eyes sharp and unreadable. Mr. Whitman, why was this never presented? For the first time since the trial started, Whitman looks rattled. He shifts in his seat, scrambling for an excuse. Your Honor, that statement, it wasn't relevant to the case. Nathan's expression stays calm, but his voice cuts through the room like a blade. Not relevant. The car's registered owner stated that the person who stole it was white. I'm not white. And yet, here I am, standing trial for a crime I didn't commit. A juror in the front row leans back in his chair, arms crossed. Another shakes her head, her expression filled with disgust. Whitman clears his throat, trying to recover. The witness might have been mistaken, or Nathan doesn't let him finish. He steps forward. Or the police saw a young black man nearby and decided that was close enough. The air in the room freezes. The judge presses his lips together. His fingers tap against the bench as he processes Nathan's words. Nathan turns toward the jury, his voice steady. How many times has this happened before? How many innocent people have been accused because someone thought they looked like the criminal? No investigation, no second guess, just a rush to judgment. A middle-aged woman on the jury lowers her head. A man clenches his jaw. Nathan lets his words hang in the air. Because everyone in this room knows he's right. Judge Coleman's gaze lingers on the young man standing before him. Nathan doesn't look nervous. He doesn't look like someone begging for mercy. He looks like someone demanding justice. The judge exhales, rubbing his temple. Then, finally he speaks. Case dismissed. A wave of silence crashes over the courtroom. Then chaos. Some spectators gasp. Others shake their heads in disbelief. Reporters scribble frantically in their notepads. Nathan doesn't move. He lets the moment settle. Prosecutor Whitman lowers his head, defeated. Judge Coleman sets down his gavel. He watches Nathan carefully. For the first time, the judge isn't looking at a reckless teenager. He's looking at something else, something far more dangerous, a mind sharper than anyone in this room expected. And as Nathan turns to leave, Judge Coleman does something unexpected. "Carter." Nathan stops but doesn't turn. The judge hesitates. Then finally, he mutters the words that no one expected him to say. "You should consider law school." Nathan smirks. "I already have." And with that, he walks out free. The courtroom erupts. The words "case dismissed" still hang in the air, but the courtroom is already descending into chaos. Gasps, murmurs, the heavy shuffle of movement. Some people shake their heads in disbelief, while others whisper to each other in stunned conversation. The reporters scramble for their notebooks, pens flying across pages as they try to capture the shocking turn of events. Nathan Carter, the 19-year-old who just dismantled an entire case on his own, remains still. He should be celebrating. He just won, but he doesn't smile. He doesn't pump his fist in the air or bask in the courtroom's stunned reaction. Because this wasn't about proving his intelligence. This wasn't about winning a game. This was about something much bigger. He turns slowly, glancing at Prosecutor Jacob Whitman, who is still sitting at his table, motionless, his face pale with humiliation. The man had walked into this trial convinced of his victory. Now, he's just another prosecutor who underestimated the wrong defendant. Nathan picks up his legal pad and steps away from the defense table. No cuffs on his wrists. No guilty verdict over his head. He walks out a free man. The second Nathan steps out of the courthouse doors, he's swarmed. Cameras flash. Microphones are shoved in his face. "Nathan, how does it feel to beat the prosecution at their own game? Did you know the judge would dismiss the case? What's next for you?" He doesn't answer. He doesn't care about the spectacle. This isn't a victory parade. It's a reminder of just how close he came to losing everything, and how many others don't get this chance. Instead, his eyes lock on the one person who matters most. At the bottom of the courthouse steps, his mother, Denise Carter, stands waiting. She doesn't say a word at first. She just looks at him, taking him in. Her son, no longer just a boy accused of a crime he didn't commit, but something more. Then, finally, she exhales, shaking her head. "Boy, you scare me half to death." Nathan chuckles softly, rubbing the back of his neck. "Had to take a risk, Ma." She doesn't hesitate. She pulls him into a tight hug. For a brief moment, the cameras, the reporters, the entire world around them fades. This wasn't just Nathan's battle. It was hers, too. And together, they won. Across the street, Judge Richard Coleman stands next to his car, watching. The once smug, condescending man who had spent years mocking and belittling defendants doesn't look so amused anymore. His posture is different, less relaxed, more contemplative. Maybe it's because he almost sentenced an innocent kid. Maybe it's because Nathan made him question things he never questioned before. Or maybe, just maybe, he sees something in the boy that he never expected to see. Someone who isn't just a defendant. Someone who isn't just another case. Someone who will be back in a courtroom someday. But next time, on the other side. Coleman hesitates, then finally speaks. "Carter." Nathan pauses at the sound of his name. He turns his head slightly, but not all the way. The judge watches him carefully, then exhales. "You should consider law school." Nathan smirks, just slightly. "I already have." And the reality of what just happened settles over the courthouse. A young black man was nearly convicted of a crime he didn't commit. The only reason he walked free was because he had the knowledge and skill to fight back. But what about the ones who don't? How many innocent people sit in jail cells right now? Not because of evidence, but because of bias. Because someone like Officer Reynolds decided that close enough was good enough. Because a prosecutor chose to bury evidence. Because a judge didn't care enough to look deeper. The justice system isn't just broken. It's rigged. And unless people start paying attention, start fighting back, it will never change. If this story made you think, even for a second, share it. Because next time, it might not be Nathan. It might be someone you know. The justice system runs on laws, but it's controlled by people. And people can change, but only if we make them. So share, speak up, and never stop fighting for the truth.